You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Welcome, guys. We're so excited to start this journey of family YouTube channel.
Yeah, so welcome, and we're definitely excited to bring you all behind the scenes, get a little snapshot of our life, our day-to-day life, hearing some of our stories, as Donna mentioned. So we're definitely excited. It's been a long time coming, for many years, and God's finally given us the green light to do it. So you excited?
Yeah.
All right.
Here we go. Today we're actually going to share with you part of our story, at least part one. Start with how we met. We met in 2014? 2014, October 2014. And we met on social media. Now that seems normal, like everybody nowadays it feels like meets their significant other on social media or some app or something, but 8 years ago, that was not normal. It was actually kind of weird or uncomfortable to tell people you met on social media, and now it's just the norm. I knew that DoQuoi was my husband just off of a picture. I just heard God say, "This is your husband." And I'm thinking, okay, I've never spoken to him before, nothing, and you're just gonna tell me this is my husband. But I knew God's voice, so I knew this is what he was saying. So I just kept it to myself. I wasn't gonna be like, "Hey, I'm your wife." I prayed and, asked God to reveal it to him instead of me coming out and telling him, which he did reveal to him.
Right. Yeah. I too had seen her picture, and over time, wasn't long, maybe a few days or maybe a week, and God too showed me that was my wife, that Donna was my wife. And I still remember showing my mom and my sister the picture and be like, God showed me who my wife is. And now I didn't know that she knew already, so
we both kept it from each other.
We kept it from each other
until one day you asked me a question.
Right. I asked you. I said, "Do you know who your husband is?" And she said yes. And I was like, first a little nervous. Now I knew I heard from God, but like, wait a minute. Now, if she knows who her husband is, but we just really met, then I don't know if she would think that it's me. But I know that God showed me that she's the one. So I didn't even know yet. And I was like, okay. So after she said that, I didn't tell her immediately. I kind of took that back to prayer, and I was like, well, we'll wait, table that until God tells me to say it.
And I don't remember what happened. How did I come out and tell you?
Right, you came out.
I don't think I just came out and told you, but how did it come out that we both knew that each other knew?
Right, it's because I eventually came back, because I remember writing it down in like my notepad or something like that on my phone, like how God showed me she was the one. And then I was like, okay, on whatever another call we had, I was gonna tell her. And so I told her that, the Lord showed me that she was my wife. I knew that she was my wife. And even though she had said before she knew her husband was, and then what did you say? Something along the lines, but essentially that's when you let me know that you knew.
Got you.
And I was like, oh, so you knew all along, and you was holding out.
Yeah.
I remember Donna wanted to, you wanted to go on a fast. I was
going on fast constantly. Because for me, that brought me closer to God, because it strengthened our relationship. I was able to hear from him better. It made our intimacy stronger. So yeah, I wanted to go on fast all the time, because if it was going to strengthen my relationship, my intimacy with him, that was exciting for me.
Ooh, yeah, she was fasting all the time. And so I was the one who was in ministry since I was 17, so church my whole life. So I'm like, yes, the Lord would have us to fast. I'm trying to be, oh, sure, of course. Okay, that's fine. So I remember it's Thanksgiving. We were on a fast, so I'm not eating, right? And so I think it was around the time we were supposed to come off the fast around that time. Yeah. And you was like, what did you
Well, we had been on it for 3 days? It wasn't a long one.
During that time? I don't remember. Yeah, it was only 3 days at that moment. But remember talking to you, and what did you say?
I don't remember my exact words, but I remember it was something along the lines of I didn't want to come off the fast. I
can remember because I wanted to eat. She was like, well, I just want to go a little deeper with God. I'm feeling the pull. He's drawing me deeper, and I want to continue. I want to extend the fast.
Well, the thing is, the thought of coming off the fast was seriously making me emotional, because it was almost like, I don't know, intervening on the relationship I was having with God. It was like, oh, come off the fast, but we had something good going there. Like the intimacy was growing stronger. Like a fast really does, if you do it right, I mean, it really does bring you closer to God. And I was enjoying that, and I was like, well, I'm not ready to leave this. I'm not ready to, you know.
I was ready to leave it. I mean, I fasted and stuff. I was with the Lord, but she was extreme with hers. Like,
I literally started tearing up.
Yeah, I was like, man, okay. So, you know, okay, we can do that. Sure, yes, the Lord would have us to go fast, deeper. Okay. So that was funny to me. It wasn't funny at the time, but
I think we did end it though, didn't we? Or maybe the next day, something.
It went a little bit longer. Well, speaking of that, well, think about, remember we first started talking on the phone, like our first couple of conversations.
Well, before DoQuoi came into the picture, all my time was spent, you know, with God. It was in the Word, it was worshiping, it was spending a lot of quiet time, and that's how I really developed, you know, an ear to hear Him and understand, okay, this is His voice. Because the more time I spent with Him, the easier it was for me to recognize His voice. So that's all I was doing. It was almost like an addiction, hearing from Him and recognizing His voice, and it was exciting, like, okay, what is He going to say next? What is He going to tell me now? What confirmation is He going to give? Like, it was building that relationship. So by the time DoQuoi came into the picture, it was like, okay, you know, DoQuoi's in the picture, but, you know, God is still number one. Okay, DoQuoi's in the picture, but I'm still going to make sure I spend a lot of time with God during the day.
Here I am going around traveling in ministry, doing all this stuff, used to this, but not used to that, like that level of intimacy and that level of just intent focus on God. I was not used to that. So she stretched me, right?
For me, I thought it was normal. I thought that that's what people did, that, you know, you're a Christian, you go to church, whatever it may be, which I get into that another time. But anyway, I thought that's what they did, that, you know, they spent a lot of time with God, they got to know God's voice, they built that relationship. I thought that was normal until DoQuoi let me know, no, you're not in the minority. I mean, many people don't do this.
Right. I spent time with God, but the way she spent time with God, that was a whole nother level. And so it stretched me, it pushed me, it opened my eyes. And so it makes me think about when we first started conversing early in the relationship, like early in just getting to know each other. She was saying how she was spending time with God, and we were supposed to talk at a certain time. We were going to talk at whatever time in the evening and whatnot. And I remember calling her like it was yesterday. Hey, you know, we talking, you know, we having a conversation. Oh no, I think I text.
I don't remember.
I think I text, and then you know, good time to call, and she was like, "Is it okay if we talk a little later?" Because
I remember that.
What was it like? You wanted?
Because I wanted to spend more time with God. It was my quiet time. It was, you know, sitting there quietly, talking to Him, waiting for Him to speak back. Like that was my favorite part.
Yeah, she truly loved intimacy with God, and I was like, I'm trying to get to know you. I want to enjoy this. So I'm like, okay, she that's good that she's putting God first, legitimately. Like, okay, she want to spend more time with God before we talk. Okay, yeah. So I'm like, okay, that's good. Like, I want to talk to you. So, yeah. So that pushed me really into truly what intimacy with God is like.
So the next. Even the wedding day, like we talked about, you know, my intimacy with God and hearing from Him often, I thought this was another thing that was normal, that God spoke to other people, gave them dates, and just, you know, gave them details of things. Before I even met DoQuoi, I think it was 2 years prior, I was seeking God and I was asking Him my wedding date. And I told Him, I remember too, I told Him that, you know, there were 2 months that I wanted. I wanted a wedding either in September or October, because that time of year, just the weather outside is my favorite. So I said I wanted in September or October, and I kind of put it back in His hands, and that's when God was like, He gave me my wedding date. He said September 14th, 2000, was it 14? 15?
15.
2015. Like, I literally had it written down in my notepad. And about 2 years later, that's when I meet DoQuoi, and we're talking about the wedding, and he brings up the timeline like, oh, it'll probably be about what, 2 years from now.
2 years from now.
And I'm like, hold on, God, this isn't the timeline. We're supposed to get married the next year, not 2 years from now.
She knew, but I didn't know yet. Now remember, this is the one that she gets dates from God. God's very detailed with her, and so I was like, and I was in prayer one day, And the Lord told me that we had to be married by the new year in 2015, but the new year on God's calendar, Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpets, the feast days of the Lord.
Which is usually in
September-ish, October sometimes. So he showed me it had to be before the new year on God's calendar. So that's when I told her that. And that's when she told me she already knew the date. God already showed. And then she pulled out her phone.
I sent a snapshot of my notepad that showed the date that I wrote it and then the date that I got, which was about 2 years prior from meeting him.
Yeah, it lets you show when she wrote it in her notepad. June, I think it was like June something.
Yeah,
like,
it was a summer.
And literally it showed the date. I was like, whoa, wow. Like,
so that timeline was going pretty quick. So he had to tell his family, I had to tell my family, and then I lived in Oklahoma at the time, he lived in South Carolina, so we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to transition to South Carolina? And it ended up being that I shipped my stuff through
FedEx, through FedEx.
I shipped my stuff there.
Like free, or pretty much it was shipped, all the stuff was shipped to South Carolina.
So once we knew the date, as far as the September date of the wedding, then we got another word. Well, DoQuoi actually, did I get the date? I think I got the date. And then you got something about it too.
Right.
But God said that, we were to get married in September, but we were going to have a wedding celebration, and that was going to be October 23rd. So the next month. So if you notice there, when I was talking to God, remember I told him I couldn't choose between the two. I wanted a wedding either in September, October because of, the weather during that time of year. And he gave me both. He gave me September and October. He said, you're going to get married in September, but you're going to have the wedding celebration in October. And he actually gave the date October 23rd of that same year, 2015. Anyways, we started preparing for the wedding, preparing for me to move to South Carolina. So after my stuff was shipped to South Carolina, I think it was the next week or so, it was soon after, me and some of my family flew to South Carolina, and about a day or two later was when DoQuoi and I ended up getting married. And then right after that, it was, okay, let's prepare for the actual wedding celebration for October. And also to backtrack some, you ended up proposing to me in August.
Right.
You proposed to me in August. I came to South Carolina to meet his family because, mind you, I hadn't met his family yet. He hadn't met my family yet. So I flew to South Carolina in August, and he proposed, and I met some of his family, and then it turned around the next month. Me and some of my family flew to South Carolina. We got married and then started planning for the October wedding.
Right. And so, how was that planning?
Oh, that planning was so hectic. It was so difficult. The warfare, there was so much warfare to even stop us from going through with it. Us getting frustrated with each other. It was a lot going on. And then certain things that I wanted for the wedding, I couldn't get for the wedding. And two, during that time, I was the type of person that I would just settle. Even if it wasn't something I wanted, well, for there to be peace, for there to be whatever, to make whatever it was easier, I was always settling. Okay, I'll settle for this. Whatever's easiest, I'll settle. I was definitely not a bridezilla at all. It was more of just people pleasing and whatever is going to make the whole process easier, I'm on board for, even if it's not what I want. Right.
And so, but during that time, preparing for the wedding, let's keep in mind that we had no money.
None.
No money whatsoever.
But we were standing on faith. Okay, God gave this date. God's going to provide. This is all going to come together, which it ended up coming together.
Well, yeah, and we were planning, and we didn't have no limit on the list. We were just inviting people. We didn't have no limit. We were so in faith of what God already said. We were just planning and inviting, but didn't have the money for anything. Really?
No, but it all worked out. He got his tux, I got my dress, we got the flowers. Last minute, the floral lady ended up coming up with something that I didn't initially want, but it turned out great. Last minute, we were getting the photographer, the videographer, the caterer. The caterer was 3 days before the wedding, I'm pretty sure.
The photographer was literally the day before.
And the videographer was the night before,
The
wasn't
videographer was day of.
Day of.
I still remember.
Oh my God.
He had just got back from doing
yeah.
something, and he was like,
Yep.
he could literally videographer day of, and the money just came slowly but surely, different forms.
It literally all pieced together. It was all working out. Again, not necessarily the way we wanted it to, but it did work out, which showed that God was still helping us along the way, piecing everything together.
Well, remember what we went praying over the venues, trying to, like, it was raining one night. Remember, we was out there praying in front of the
midnight.
in front of the gate at midnight. We praying at the gate at the venues and all that. And what ended up happening was, remember, that's when a storm came through.
Yeah, a storm came through, and so, well, the venue we wanted, we didn't get. It was already booked up, and there ended up being a hurricane around that time, so it flooded the grounds. So there was another venue that was okay. Well, we'll take this as a second option, and it ended up becoming available because I guess some people had to actually cancel because the grounds were so wet because the hurricane that had come through. So we did get that, and I think we got it at a cheaper price than what they originally were trying to.
Right, and it was a big, a very popular location, expensive location
In South Carolina.
that a lot of people, because it's outside, beautiful scenery outside, and like a plantation area, but it
Right by the water too.
it opened up just on
minute.
our day. It opened up, and
Yeah, because it wasn't available to begin with, but yeah, it did open up. And we also got the tent. I wanted it under a tent, and I think they already had a tent placed there, so we got that as well.
And before we go further, keep in mind that I was not working a job. God, September 17th, 2009, still remember that date, God had called me off my job when I lived in Atlanta the first time, and he was like, you gotta trust me. And that was a journey, because it's like, okay, well, I was used to helping people, paying bills, these other things. But people, now I'm like, how am I gonna survive? But I trusted him. I wasn't afraid. I was excited, thinking, these businesses were gonna be blooming, all these things. But I remember when I was in South Carolina, and an opportunity opened up literally at the post office, and then all of a sudden, she calls me the day before orientation. And she tells me